Can you hear me?
KP, are we
Hey, girl.
live? Oh, wait, you're not on.
I will be in like 2 seconds.
Yes, but I'm trying to figure out how to get you in my headset
Oh,
instead of where everybody can hear me.
okay. I can hear you. I don't know what you're doing on your end, and I'm just going speakerphone.
Oh, I am not. I am at the Austin Women's event. Look, amazing women right here.
Hello, hello, hello.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
there are
hello.
lots of them. And I'm giving them some free advertising. So,
You're not J1.
no, I'm not. Somebody asked me if I had wine, but the answer is no. I just wish I did. I am standing in
Yeah.
front of the step and repeat. If that's I'm just hiding out using their table.
Love it.
So look, it says we're live. So I am at just so everybody knows, I don't know where you are. It doesn't look like you're home either in your home base.
I'm in New Orleans here. I don't know if you can see downtown. I give everyone a little shout out.
Yeah.
This is we're at the JW Marriott.
Oh, I'm in a JW Marriott. I'm at the one in Austin. If you can see the
Road Warrior
Austin background.
All right.
Well, I live here, but we're having a women's event, so empowering women, and we have some great partners here, including UFCU being one of the partners.
Let's
Jay
go.
Vineyards and Winery, and then our friends over here at Consuela, who were giving away free purses and all the things to support women, and there are hundreds of vendors and things going on today, so it's great fun. But I'm excited to be here with you today.
Well, I appreciate you making it happen. And we're missing our co-host, the lead, Brian Views. So I don't know if he's traveling or what, but
So he abandoned us today.
I know I had that a few weeks ago as well. Okay, so you wanna get into some of the topics that Robbie sent us. I think were pretty cool. I mean, this big old Fed meeting coming up. It's kind of a big deal. I think it's
kind of a big deal.
It's worth mentioning. I'll just espouse some thoughts. I threw my usual Thursday LinkedIn video out there last night, and I talked a little bit about it. But all the inflation data, all the jobs data, which jobs is much more important than inflation at this point. All the accumulation of everything to this point will come to a head next Wednesday when the Fed meets, and they meet every 6 weeks, the Federal Open Market Committee meeting. What's interesting about this meeting is that every other meeting, so only once in 12 weeks, do they put their dot plot out. So it's called the SEP, the Summary of Economic Projections, and they are going to reset the course of the flow of money, at least until their next meeting in 6 weeks, or possibly the next dot plot 12 weeks from now. And what they basically do, if you haven't seen it, just Google dot plot, right? Google the dot plot, you can see. But all 19 Fed members, not all of them voting, but all of them put their summary of economic projections, and it's very simple. They say, where they think the unemployment rate is going to be by the end of this year, by the end of next year. They say where GDP is going to be by the end of this year, next year. I think they even go into 2026. They talk about, GDP, unemployment rate, inflation. But the thing is the most important at this point, which will really correct the flow of money, and I'm talking about trillions of dollars, is where they're going to say where the Fed funds rate will be, where the target is, where it will end up. And so the market likes to price in where it thinks the Fed is going to go, or it thinks it maybe should go. And then the Fed will come out and smack the market in the face, and the market moves. So, it'll be interesting. There's a big debate. Are they going to go 25 basis points next Wednesday or 50? Are they going to do 25 basis point cuts?
Are you betting on it, Kevin?
I'm betting 25. So
I am too. I'm a little conservative.
Well, is there any logic behind it other than just,
yes.
Hey,
no, there's logic behind it.
You said I'm conservative. That sounded fear-based.
No, No, not fear-based, but I kind of expected you to be like, no, they need to do 50. You listen to like Logan
They do need to
Montashami,
do
and
50.
they do
They
need to do
do.
50, but
Yeah,
I don't think they're going to.
I agree.
I think that there are a couple of things that come into that. One being the data is slightly conflicted. If you listen to what they say and the data that they're looking at and how they're interpreting it, I don't know that I agree that it's conflicted, but I think they do. And I also think that there's a worry that if they do 50 basis points ahead of the election, it could have an impact on the election or a perceived impact, and they want to avoid that perception, but they know they can't do nothing. So I feel like that's
That's
where we are.
that's a hot take. I like that. Um, I would say they don't want to do 50, and the main reason they don't want to do 50 is because they haven't telegraphed that they're going to do it. They haven't kind of got the tea leaves out there to set the table for it, and plus they don't want the market to overreact and think that they're going 50 because jobs are weakening, the economy's weakening. It would completely destroy their soft landing narrative, and they're really trying to nail that. They're trying to say, hey, we're landing this plane, we're doing everything right on time. There's nothing that we didn't know about. There's nothing that came out and was transitory or whatever, and we didn't know about. So they should go 50. And I want them to go 50 as a mortgage practitioner.
Yes.
They're not. They're not going to go 50. And I'll add one more thing. The the real interest rate, right? So if the Fed's fund rate is at 525 to 550, all right. That's where the cost of money is. And here's inflation. It was high, and every time inflation gets lower and lower and lower, that gap between where the Fed hasn't moved yet and where inflation is coming down is very restrictive on our economy, and it hurts the poor. And so they call that the real rate. And there was an interesting article that came out in Wall Street Journal yesterday. Nick Timiraos he always asks a question at the press conference. He's known as the Fed Whisperer. And he's one of those guys that when he says something, everyone's like, oh, wow, this is what the Fed must be thinking. And what he said yesterday was that example that I just gave you, where we are on this chart. Let's go over here. Okay. So if the Fed rate comes down only 25, but inflation has been falling further and further, it didn't do anything to make rates less restrictive. And so what he's saying is that you need to come down 50 to close that gap because they're behind the curve. Inflation is falling like a rock. So it was very interesting. And then the last speaker last Friday before the Fed went into the quiet period, Fed President Waller, right after the jobs report at 8:30 Eastern, he came out and he said, to my point about setting the table and the narrative and all that, he said, it wouldn't be a bad thing if we were to pull forward some of the rate cut. Again, kind of setting the table for a 50 basis point rate cut. So I think they're going to do it at the next meeting, 2 days after the election. They're going to go 50 bips.
Yep. I don't disagree with you for all the logic that you've talked about and all the ones that we've talked about. And I think about what you talk about, the impacting the poor. And I don't know if you and I have talked about this. I know I went to a class and we learned about ALICE, which is asset limited, income constrained, but employed. And it's like 56% of the population, according to United Way. And when we have things like this, those are the persons that are being impacted in the most negative way. Look at what your credit card interest rates are. I look at the ones that I get offered, and those rates, if you miss a payment, if you're late, if you do anything, they're high 20s to low 30s. And I have great credit. Imagine if you have slightly less than perfect credit. What does that look like for your monthly payments and how you're having to try to survive and pay your rent or your mortgage and buy groceries? These things become really difficult, and this has a real impact on people's lives.
Yeah, if you're in that Alice position, some people are living paycheck to paycheck. So what happens when you have a large medical expense or the air conditioning in frickin' Central Texas goes out and you got to pay, 15 grand overnight, right? Or 18 or whatever it is now. I mean, everything's so expensive. I remember it used to just cost like $3 grand to fix the frickin' AC. I mean, you can't even anybody to get off their ass to come even talk to you and diagnose the problem. It seems like for that, but yeah, I think this whole paycheck to paycheck thing is playing out right in front of the Fed's favor, and so the problem is with those higher rates, if consumers slow down in spending, if they spend less on certain things, companies will cut jobs, right? So, and that's the big thing that everyone's looking at now is labor breaking. It's softening. It's not breaking. I don't know what your thoughts are on labor, but it's like all the high point right now.
You know, what's interesting is you hear folks talking about jobs, those that are looking for jobs, and there's a lot of stress and pressure about jobs that are actually available or not, that oftentimes they'll apply for roles and only to learn that the company has decided to pause on that until after the election, or pause on that until they see what the Fed rate cuts are going to be. You know, pause on that till the end of the year. You know, they're waiting on things to happen. And so I think that it can be very demotivating for folks, especially for folks in our industry that have been waiting for this resurgence and this upcycle. And
Yep.
they're loyal, they're good employees, they're really good practitioners in the business, and they've really been suffering.
So let me take a pause here. You're watching The Last Word, brought to you by the Chrisman Commentary. I got to see Rob Chrisman himself, man. He's such a legend. I love making him blush because you cannot pay that man a compliment. He just deflects. He's such a class act. But I do enjoy my time with him. I got to spend some time with him at the Mortgage Collaborative, and I'll talk about it in a second. But our episode sponsor is Mace Innovations. And Chris Mace, he's very active on LinkedIn. He's out there. So, please give them a look. They're doing some great development work. And, with rates coming down, there's a lot more deals, there's more revenue. People will start to invest in tech. So if you're thinking about it, give Mace a call. Their team will do a great consultation for you. On that note, I thought it was funny when I read the Chrisman Commentary this morning, the Chrisman blog. The first line said something like, as you and I just talked for 10 minutes about like the macro economy and everything, the first line said he ran into Rob ran into an LO, and one of his borrowers said, "Hey, you know what? I just pay you to find me the best rate, give me the best deal. I don't want to care what you think about what's going to happen in the future."
There's some truth to that. Yes. I mean, and that just leads nicely into our conversation on housing expense, because what we're not seeing is what some of our friends call the housing crash bros. We are not seeing this housing crash. We're not seeing this great deceleration, even with inventory creeping up a little bit. You're starting to see sellers pull homes off the market. They've kind of gotten used to this equity that they have, and you're not seeing home price deceleration. So the cost of housing, not only from purchasing but from renting, continues to at least maintain where it is. We're not seeing any kind of relief there. There's several different proposals that are out both at the national and the state levels that aim to address this. And I think it's a topic that everyone cares deeply about. What are your thoughts on any of those areas that we just touched on?
Well, I always want to point this out, because when we talk about, there's a difference between home prices are going down versus they're going up a little more slowly, right? Appreciation is slowing, but there's still price increases, right? Same thing with inflation in the broader economy, right? So for me, it is interesting, because a lot of times when you see someone say, okay, Austin, for example, where you are, right? Austin is experiencing price declines. Now, they might be experiencing outright price declines at like the higher price point of homes. I know they are for like jumbo loans, right? And so then that means less of the higher end stuff is selling. I guess the people from California aren't coming in and selling their house here and going to Austin anymore. But so the median home price comes down, and that brings all the averages down and the medians down. And that's different, right? Because, you and I both know that homes under 300,000 almost don't exist. And,
Correct.
They're flying off the shelf if they do, whether it's, a working family or an investor trying to buy it, to rent it out. Not an institutional investor, just any kind of investor. So, I think there are different brackets of homes that are out there, which is why it's nice to, the FHFA price index just looks at the Fannie Freddie stuff, right? It strips out jumbo loans. So, that index and all indexes, indices, are all going up. So home prices are going up, but so is insurance, and so is taxes.
Why
And
are you trying
so,
to bring the bad news then on a Friday?
So it's called the Oreo sandwich, right? Or some people call it the shit sandwich, right? So you start with the good news, then you hit them with the shit, and then you end with some more good news. So like you go with the cookie and then the white stuff in the middle, and then although I like the white stuff in the middle, I actually don't even like the chocolate chip cookie.
I think Diana's going to start bleeping you when you use those kind of words on our family friendly podcast.
Sugar. I apologize, Mace Innovations. Sugar, my bad. And you're right. I have been working on that. Trust me, there's a lot more cussing I want to do, but I've been very good. But yeah, insurance. I mean, gosh, here this trade show I'm at, this AIM Fuse show, almost didn't go off because of Hurricane Francine. And there are some lenders and vendors that just canceled and decide not to come. There's some attendees that decide not to come. I got on the phone with my chief marketing officer, Paul Aceto. I was like, man, we got to make this happen. We got the booth there. We're rolling out a new portal, the Loan Express Originator for wholesale and correspondent at PRMG. We got to make a splash, we're going. And one of our AEs, poor girl, Brenda Oxford, she was sitting up playing last night, and at midnight they canceled it. And the next flight out was 5 a.m. And it's like 3 hours of driving just to get home and then back. She slept in the airport. I mean, this is a grown ass woman who's very accomplished. She's a mother. Like she's not like, when you walk by the people sleeping in the airport, you're always like, gosh, couldn't they get a hotel somewhere? You always think that,
sometimes it's not possible.
Sometimes it's not possible. And sometimes it doesn't make sense to drive an hour and a half home and drive an hour back. You might as well just sleep for 3 hours. Right. So,
yes.
So anyway, this hurricane that hit here, is going to cause some damage. I don't know the estimate yet, but I know when, I believe Beryl came through Texas, the estimate is at $1.4 billion in damage.
Billion. They start with B.
So boom, there goes our insurance costs. I mean, it's a real thing. So having said that, the most important driver for home affordability is rates, and rates are coming down. So there's the other side of my poop sandwich. We are coming down. Rates are getting better. It is a great tailwind for home affordability. There will be more competition for what little inventory is out there, and it'll drive prices back up. But if you couldn't afford a house marginally, you're back in the money.
Yeah, so now might be a good time to go put that contract on a property this weekend ahead of what's coming in the next few weeks, and just maybe have a little bit longer closing. And if you feel confident and talk to a mortgage professional, maybe you want to float your interest rate a bit. You're seeing some of the pundits talk about floating interest rates at this point, as opposed to, the constant daily reminders to lock your loans. They're saying, hey, cautiously floating could be an option in this current environment that we're in.
Yeah. And for those that have to sell their house to get the new one, say you're not a first-time home buyer, they've got some great power buyer programs out there where you can get your home listed, and then you basically get 180 days to go out and kind of hunt for the new loan, right? So it's there's some pretty creative financial products out there to make it a little more convenient.
No, absolutely. And our job as lenders is to really listen to those pain points and create problems. Don't create the problems, create the solutions that solve those problems and solve those pain points. Yeah,
I'm still remembering Alice, right? So the important part at the end, the E, is employed. So income constrained yet employed. And so there's no greater deflationary force than losing your job. And jobless claims came out yesterday, and they're about on point. And so we talk a lot about labor softening. It's not broken. It's not breaking, but it is softening. And so it'd be interesting to see if we can get this, this injection of cheaper money, this injection of refinances and cash outs and lower interest rates and lower credit cards, to your point. Even the used car, the Manheim used car index, which came out in the CPI report, or part of those reports, showed less of an increase in used car prices. And so, that's a sign of obviously higher interest rates. And so if rates start to come down, we'll start to see more competition. Be curious to see how that goes down. I would just add one thing. I read a very interesting chart. I say this a lot. I pay like all these subscription fees for all these different sources of information that literally no one else that I know has. And so one of them was Stansberry Research, and they showed this chart. Okay, and I love doing these little things where I should have like a drawing, but basically you've got this line going down for job openings, and you have this line going up for people unemployed. So as those two converge on each other, so as there are less job openings and more people unemployed, these are signs, obviously, of potential recession. And so, recession talk is on the table again. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but that a lot of times when the Fed does what it's been doing and keep rates at one of the highest levels it's been at for as long as it has without cutting, you put a lot of constraint. So it kind of depends on your mindset. Are you looking for bad news? Are you trying to be defensive and you're a conservative? Or are you trying to look for the good things? Baby boomers have money. They're still spending money. They're still, consumer sentiment came out today. I didn't even get a chance to see that report. I don't know if you saw it or not. But
no, I've been at this women's event, which has been fabulous, but I have not looked at any economic data yet this morning.
Oh, if there's somebody you want to put a comment down in the live, that'd be great. I did miss the consumer sentiment, unfortunately. So I don't know. Do you think we're in a recession?
I think we've been in a recession. Like I know that the data's not there, but if you go off of how people feel, which we all know that the mindset and the psychological impact of things really is what can drive markets. It's what drives bank failures in a lot of cases. Not necessarily the bank is unstable, but no bank, not even the largest ones, could survive a run on them. And so if people's mindset changes and sentiment changes, it can put you in a place, and I think in a place that's very negative. And I think from a recessionary standpoint, you have a lot of people who have been impacted by not getting increased wages, or one of the persons in the household who's contributing to income has lost their employment. Maybe their overtime has been cut. And when you're living paycheck to paycheck, that's significant. You've also seen the price of groceries go up, and the price of everyday living. So if you are in a 30-year fixed rate, the number one complaint that you get at a call center for a mortgage is my payment went up. I have a fixed rate. What do you mean that my payment went up? Oh, your taxes and insurance went up. And that's where you see this change in what your family can afford. And that feels pretty recessionary to a lot of folks.
I agree.
So I think we're there.
Yeah, I know housing and manufacturing has had a recession. I brought up last week on the show that farming is in recession. So it'll be interesting to see if anything else rolls over as labor continues to weaken. Having said that, right now we're on the precipice of a Fed rate cut. So people who are invested in the stock market, the last I checked this morning, we're touching at almost all-time highs again. Remember we had a little sell-off in early August, the first Monday of August, and then we had a sell-off the first few days of September after we got back from Labor Day, and now the market's back, right? And so, what the heck's going on? It's like, it is crazy if you don't watch this stuff. I literally watch this stuff every day. I'm a very active trader, and that's part of why I pay for all that research, is to make sure I don't mess up, and I do. But it was interesting, since basically the beginning of September, it's very rocky, right? Earnings season's coming to an end. We've got this election coming up. We got the Fed about to cut. And then when the CPI report came out on Wednesday, and the headline numbers at 2.5%, down from 2.6%, that's soft. If you strip out, the housing part of it, it's like 1.1%. So it's really just owner's equivalent rent, right? It's really just housing. And to be honest, I think everybody knows, and I think the Fed's finally giving up. They can't build more houses. So, are we going to become Europe? It's the haves and the have-nots. That's how I've always run my life. I mean, I'm not even kidding. Since like, I swear, since elementary school and junior high, I'm like, Europe has like no middle class. You either own property and you're part of a family that can help you get property, or you ain't never getting it. So, I know we're not there in America, but when I see what's happened since COVID, and I see, now when rates are higher, how much harder it was, for people to get into a home, especially with there being so little. I mean, look, we're still at 63% homeownership rate in America. I mean, it's not that bad, but could it get worse? Could it get worse from here?
It could.
I don't know.
It could, and we don't want that. I mean, you look at, speaking of Europe, I read an interesting article in my morning reading today. This is what I do at 3 or 4 in the morning when I get up, is read all these articles that come out, and they were talking about Europe and Europe's overall economy, and they're making some bold moves, or they're trying to support some bold moves, including allowing additional mergers across European countries, more like a treating it like a United States or the European Union, but creating more economic opportunities because they don't see that they've really kept pace with the world, and they want to increase tariffs. They want to make sure that China is not taking advantage of them. So some great articles on there, out there in the world about what's going on in Europe and what they're trying to do to make it better economically. And it may not feel this way, but we have the best economy in the world.
We do.
So for all the negative talk, we live in the best place.
We really do. Like, I like to think, like, what if just my whole life went to hell in a handbasket? I would live off like some dollar menu at a fast food place. I would totally scale down. I would get like the cheapest little electric vehicle possible and just kind of like do my thing and just hang out at the beach. And I would just surf the internet. I swear, I think I could do it. I don't know if you have these survival thoughts. Like, what if there was like an earthquake or a tsunami and like you had like, it was a total reset, an asteroid hit the planet. Like, would you really be able to make it? I look at my kids. Okay. I didn't choose to raise them in Orange County. All right. I moved there for the opportunity at PRMG to become a partner in the company, but I'm raising soft children. And so I'm like, I mean, they're tough. They play soccer and they play sports, but I'm like if we were like stranded for like 4 days, like, what are their survival skills? And that's on me. I'm dad. So I think about look, I don't think we're going to go to that kind of stuff. We are in a great spot. It's a great country. We're in a good spot. European Bank, they just did their second cut. That was announced yesterday. So their second 25 basis point cut. And they're projecting like 1.1% GDP growth. Bank of England, they're meeting soon. They had a cut back in August of 25 basis points, which, by the way, all the banks, they all kind of work together. So, it's almost like, why do we even look at inflation and employment reports? They're all going to just work together anyway. And US is going to, the Fed's going to like let them start. Then we come in from behind, because we got to scoop up the bulk of all of fixed income securities business around the world and float our big ass budget. But, you're right about Europe. I mean, Germany is a high manufacturing country, but they do certain things. Ukraine is the breadbasket. They have a lot of grain and they help feed a lot of Europe, which is one big reason why them joining NATO pissed off freaking Russia, and they're going to war there. And so, I don't know how they get on the same page. China does historically dump a lot of oversupply into Europe. And it does wreck with a lot of local businesses. They can't really have local businesses that can compete. So your point about tariffs is not new in Europe. And China, by the way, I'm going to end right here. They're not growing like they have been. I mean, if you look at the price of oil right now, it's at like $63 a barrel. China is a huge buyer of oil. They're not buying. Their economy is not doing well. Their real estate has crumbled. Most people have like 70% of their net worth are tied up into real estate, and their housing prices in China have come down. And, look at Shein and all these different like companies that are now flooding our markets in the US with like cheap goods, and Europe is getting flooded with electric vehicles from China. Their own population doesn't have demand. And so, there's a big impact on that. And so if there's global slowdown and global recessionary type pressure, anything under 2% GDP in any country is contractionary. It does have a ripple effect here in America, although I do think we're sheltered pretty well.
That's a great place to end it today. We almost ended it on the zombie apocalypse and whether or not you're going to make your kids go live in a tent on the beach. But I'm glad we moved on from that, and your kids aren't going to have to endure that. You can get them into scouts or something. I've seen your kids. They've got some spunk and energy. I think that they'll be fine.
Yeah, that'll be good.
So once again, I agree. Thank you to Crispin Commentary for putting this together. Thank you to our sponsor today, Mace Innovations. Thanks, KP, for joining us from the JW Marriott, live from the Austin Marriott. We hope you guys have a great week, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Bye-bye.
Have a great weekend. Cheers.